Paul Ferris is one of Britain's most notorious faces. Known as the wee man because of his size, he's an unlikely hard man. Ferris was employed by Arthur Thompson to carry out attacks on rivals with military precision and merciless ferocity. The mere mention of his name struck terror into the hearts of Arthur's enemies.
The reputation came about probably media-led. They like to put a tag on people that sells newspapers and different things like that. But from an early point of view, I'm not saying the newspapers are responsible for my actions. I'm responsible for my actions. And I knew at a very early age that I was going to do something back to these bullies. And there was a situation that I've heard recently for a well-renowned boxer, Alex Arthur. He was doing an interview and he used a phrase called punch resistant. He became punch resistant after so many years in the ring. And I thought, I'm going to try and use that as an analogy to put forward that you become fear resistant. You know, the whole point of it is the fear that you've experienced and the violence you've experienced as an early kid, a young kid. You're resistant to that fear and that level of violence, even meeting the violence out.
Well, I met Paul through my younger brother, and he knew that I was into jewellery robberies and things like that, and he asked to come on board. And I ended up, I've took him to do a few, you know what I mean?
How did they work? What did you do?
Well, we used to again, one is would go in and would be dressed up and all that. We'd think me a pair of glasses and suit and all that, and I would get in and ask to see a tray of rings, something like that. And I'd just run out the door with it, and Paul would be round the corner in the car, then he'd go and do the next one. And so that's how we started off, you know what I mean?
And what about the violence? Was it?
Well, we started getting into the city centre and things like that, and getting drunk, and we ended up in a lot of trouble with people. And we ended up carving out a reputation for serious violence. We were slashing people with Stanley blades in it. And we were actually called the Stanley Gang. But there was a lot of people trying to attack us, so we were just getting in there first. And we came to the notice of Arthur Thompson. And one night, he'd asked to bring me, for me and Paul, to go to the prom Mill. And Paul went and I never turned up, and that was the night he was recruited with the Thompson for him.
I was introduced to Tam Bagan, who was already working with the Thompsons, collected cash all over the city. And I was introduced as what you would call another bagman, another collector. We never asked any questions about how much was in it, who paid the debt, what was the debt for. It was just things you don't ask. You know, what it was you go and see Mr. A and collect X amount, and then you take it back. There was certain times where people had never had the money on the given time. And other people get the misconception is because they've not got the money, we use the strong arm tactics and go and beat them up and all the rest of it, or threaten them. And that never happened when we were doing it. But they had to give us something, either a time or date, to get back to tell Thompson that Mr. A never had the money at that time, but we'll go back and revisit him on such and such a date because that's the date he gave us. And that would probably be the last date. And people genuinely had the money on the dates that they said that they were getting. And during the process of this, they had lost something in the region of £50,000 through a transaction that they were doing. And they were given a holdall that had been superglued. And once the holdall had been cut open at the side, I don't know the significance in it, I still don't know the significance in it. There was 2 building bricks and a bottle of iron brew, which is a kind of well-known Glasgow and Scottish drink that was gaffer taped together to give the impression of weight. You know, somebody's handing a holdall over, they've got a bit of weight, nothing moves. I still can't understand how somebody would part with £50,000 for without checking what was in a particular bag. They saw that as a big insult, and this happened roughly around about the time I just joined. So on the process to try and get this debt back, there was a few casualties that were given a message, and the message was that you've took a right fucking liberty, be given this bag over and more or less robbed them. On one occasion, I'd been given false information about a guy called Raymond Bonner, who was alleged to be involved in it, and they heard that I was coming to see him with regards to the £50,000. And he was armed. I was alleged to have been furnished with this information, and as it turns out in the later years, that the guy had nothing to do with it. You know, it was one of the Thompsons that were telling me, matter of fact, it was one of the female members of the Thompson family who told me about it, and which resulted in Raymond Bonner being repeatedly stabbed, and his dog in the back seat of a vehicle, which caused quite a lot of heat in Glasgow at that time, and I was given the opportunity to kind of move away and go to the Isle of Bute, Rossi, where Thompson had a family holiday home.
Within minutes of Ferris arriving on the island, the police had stormed the house and arrested him.
I don't even think we got a meal in the house. I remember getting a cup of tea, I remember watching the TV. I remember vividly the sound of wood splintering and the doors coming in. And this flat had 2 outer storm doors, which came in, and the inner door came in, and there was shouts of armed police identifying themselves who they were. And at that time, all I had on was a pair of joggy bottoms and a t-shirt. I was very conscious of the fact that I wanted to go out into the hallway with my hands kind of outstretched to indicate, look, I've got nothing on me. Just in the event that somebody's got an itchy trigger finger and just wants to shoot first and ask questions later. And at that stage, as soon as I've appeared, it happened so quickly, but very professionally. You know, you're bundled to the ground, you're handcuffed, and my left-hand side of the face was on the floor, so I could readily see who was above me. And there was one in particular who was about 6'6", very well built, snow white hair, had a gun jammed in the back of my neck, and said, "You know what this is, you little bastard, you're going to get it." And at that time, Anne-Marie had just accidentally appeared in the hallway, and he put up a screen, "Get a WPC in here," obviously unaware there was a female in the house, which resulted in loads of chaos. I got lifted up, put into the bedroom, searched, all the rest. None of it, apart from a couple of £100 that I had for survival money. But a strange thing happened. They turned round after searching the place, they never found nothing, and then produced a green bank bag.
Despite Ferris's claims that there was nothing in the house, the police produced a bag which they said contained drugs. He was arrested, charged and remanded in custody to await trial. Ferris firmly believed that the Thompson family were responsible for framing him.
Only 2 people knew where I was going. It was Arthur Thompson Sr. and Arthur Thompson Jr. And I firmly believe it was Arthur Thompson Jr. that set me up.
Ferris confronted Arthur Thompson Jr. about being set up when they met in Barlinnie prison. Stammering and shaking, Arthur Jr. denied all knowledge of any such conspiracy. However, in an effort to save face, when the pair had parted company, Arthur Jr. began telling everyone that he was compiling a hit list, and Paul Ferris's name was at the top.
Arthur Thompson Jr. signed his own death warrant when he was in prison. He'd be talking about who he's going to kill. And when he got out, issuing the threats again that resulted in his death. So if anybody's to blame for his sudden demise, then it's self-explanatory on you can't be threatening people because sometimes people take you serious.
Within hours of Thompson being released from prison, he was back drinking in the Proven Mill Inn, where he began reading out his hit list to anyone that cared to listen.
And if Arthur thought he was going to get into his own quarters, sit there and talk about killing people and this and that, and it wasn't going to get back to the people. The first person to get back to was Paul Ferris. He's one of the first ones on the list. So you can't go about bragging, you're going to do this and do that. These guys have got a lot of power, a lot of people, a lot of friends. They came back from within a matter of hours. Fat Boy was funded, he couldn't even get back to prison. He was funded them in, it was less than a day, the hit list been read out. Some of the friends of life, and he was capable of it. The persons that dealt with Fat Boy, he was capable of it. They knew that, he knew it, they knew it. He went to do his cell, not the balls to his cell, but he'd have paid, and that was what he was doing.
And not a good idea to sit in a crowded pub and read out a list, which top of the list, Paul Ferris saying, I'm going to kill Paul Ferris. Not a good idea.
Any other time I think Paul Ferris would have laughed that half. But as I say, you don't laugh half, so I'm laughing at it. But Paul knows in his heart, Arthur wasn't capable of breaking a twig. But when he was evil enough, poison enough, and bad enough to pay people, even to get somebody beat up for fun, that young Arthur would do that, Fat Boy would do that, just get people beat up for fun. No, he was dangerous with his mouth, dangerous with his money. And in my opinion, rightly so, he threatened a few lives. Maybe home leaving, maybe when is the right time to kill somebody or whatever, but that's it. The only thing is, home leave, he was out and first leaving prison, but as I say, he knew what he was doing, knew what he was talking about, knew who he was threatening, and he paid the price.